Fresh from two Fox hits, that would be Raheem Kassam on Laura Ingraham last night and yours truly on Maria Bartiromo this morning. Raheem, you've got a lesson. You got to get in there and wrestle for the mic. I had people actually texting me last night saying Raheem was very Natalie attired. Looked like Harold McMillan, I think somebody told me. Harold McMillan, very Natalie attired. But you go on. Was it 20 seconds? What's your total?
I think I got about
you and Jim Hansen are
15 or something like that. Hey,
Jim Hansen got 20 seconds.
I'll tell you, my first when I was on CNN, I get done with my first appearance ever, and I was nice and I was cordial. And I was on with Bakari Sellers, who I knew from South Carolina. Get to the end, and there was like maybe 10 seconds of dead time. I could have kept going, but I paused and I was like, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to be cordial. Bakari jumps in, slams me, slams President Trump, and right when the camera goes off, we start walking off. He just looks at me, and goes, always get the last word, and then it rhymes with switch. And he just looked, and he kind of smiles, and he goes, "That's your welcome to the NFL, Jay." And he walked off. So that's that.
He was good.
You got to be a jerk.
Here's the thing: you start the show, you throw the gauntlet down at me. I'm gonna do a sentiment analysis on digital media. Whose Fox hit had more impact per second?
Okay,
per second.
Maria Bartiromo this morning with Stephen K. Bannon or Raheem Kassam on Laura Ingraham.
That sounds to me like if you're explaining, you're losing.
Exactly. I didn't want to say.
Many people
are saying. By the way, for our radio audience on the John Fredericks Radio Network, we've got from Richmond, Virginia, we have Dr. Eric Edwards, the CEO of Flow, talking about this stand-up of this amazing planned events manufacturing. We've got Pete Hegseth, his new book, American Crusade. For the radio audience, I know you can't see this, in the podcast audience, we have two Natalie attired gentlemen. In fact, 3 nice sport coats today. Right, 3 nice sports coats. So very
sport coat Wednesday.
It's a little chilly here in Washington D.C. today. Live from the nation's capital. It's Wednesday, the 20th of May, the year of our Lord 2020. On all of our distribution platforms, over 100 million views, over 8 million on the podcast. Yes, and we are looking for some Joe Rogan type money. Joe Rogan, and I was on Fox, and the other person on Fox was lighting up Rogan. It's unfocused, it drifts, it's not very good, etc. I don't know. For Rogan's kind of a cult hero, right?
I give credit to anyone who wakes up and grinds and does it day after day. Whether it's a Dan Bongino, who's always consistently in the top 10, and Dan will be the first one to tell you that in the first 4 years of doing his podcast, never made any money, and then magically in like year 5, he started to make it. Even going into the guys, whether it be like Barstool or Joe Rogan or look, New York Times, Mike Barbaro, that guy grinds every day.
Every day. The Barstool, the guy said the other day when he says, "Hey, I've been doing this for 23 years." Right? It's grinding. This is one thing I say about Matt Drudge: love him or hate him. Drudge has been at work 7 days a week for 25 years. When Andrew used to do the site, it was like 12 on, 12 off, but I mean, it was 7 days a week with 2 guys. That's the people. If you grind and you have grit, this is how we're going to get through this entire pandemic. Okay, we've got a very big show today. Got a lot to get, and particularly the fact that we like that we're driving the conversation, particularly in the mainstream media. Jack Maxey is going to have a personal tete-a-tete here with the Rachel Maddow producers. We don't think he still quite got the story right. This is about Lansing. We're going to get in a minute. But more breaking news, you were the guy that discovered the University of Washington because you're a Seattle boy and you were reading the local papers. We were getting ready at the very early stages of this pandemic. Seattle was one of the initial hotspots. It came up that the University of Washington had this epidemiologist group that did these models, and the local Seattle station had it, and the Seattle Times had it, and you brought it up to everybody's attention. Next thing you know, everybody's talking about it. They've kind of come the bellwether. As we argue, we would like to see Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx in the CDC's own model. They're lighting up poor Kevin Hassett. He's an econometrics guy. Rachel Maddow the other day was beating on Hassett about his model. But this one is the one they go off of. There's been a change to that, but I haven't seen that. I haven't seen mainstream media pushing this nonstop.
Yeah, and you're not going to. So this is the IHME at the University of Washington, Dr. Chris Murray, who's out there quite a bit. Here's the big explosive thing, and I go through and read their website every single day. Their projections going out to August
4th.
Going out to August 4th. They've now revised downward nationally the number of deaths due to coronavirus by 3,683
Why
deaths.
haven't we had the stop the press moment on this? Because if it was up, the headlines would be model, goes up because of Trump's allowing the country to reopen, right?
So that's the whole thing. And again, these guys are, this is University of Washington, it's Seattle, it's IHME. They're not homers, they're not fans. They've literally, they've at times been in the speculative category. This is a 1 week revision. So they'd come out with their numbers on May 12th, where they said overall there'd be 147,000 deaths in the U.S. Now, a week later, they're saying it'll be 143. But I want to go a couple of state by state breakdown, because this is where it goes head to head with the you would say the hair on fire approach that we see from Rachel Maddow and some of the lefties.
And you have said, and I reiterate today, but you said I think you were the first guy to come up with it, that the whole country wants to be open, and the governor's going to be in charge rapidly, smartly, and safely, right? Everybody's in back of that. Whatever the political party is, whatever your thing, but we've got to get open. Mnuchin says yes, you're going to have permanent damage. So let's go into the details of what the model says.
Yeah. So let's go into where they're having significant downward revisions. So they have New York revising down by 2,000 deaths on the projections, Jersey down by 600, Pennsylvania down by 3,000, Massachusetts down by about 700. Others that they're revising down would include Missouri by about 1,000, Florida down by 1,100, and the biggest, or one of the biggest, North Carolina down by 1,900. So here's why this matters and why you have to look at the body of numbers and the trends and what's going on to get a sense. Because if you go to the New York Times, where they have here's where cases are going up, which, by the way, they dropped off of one state today. So it's at 9 states where they're saying new cases increasing. Most of the country is where they're roughly the same, although if you take a look at it, like, for example, Hawaii, 631 overall deaths. It's basically flatlined. A bunch of those where cases are mostly the same. It's because they're so small they can't go any lower. And where new cases are decreasing, which is growing and growing. But if you go to where they say they're increasing, there are 9. Texas, North Carolina, as I just mentioned, Minnesota, Arizona, Delaware, Arkansas, North Dakota, Maine, Wyoming. Now, a few of these, again, are so small, the North Dakotas, the Wyomings, it's tough to even go and put them on the list, but that's fine. They go ahead and do. But let's focus in on that for a minute. So IHME just came back in 1 week's time. They've rounded down the total number of deaths projected by 1,900. New York Times still has them on the upward trajectory. IHME is clearly seeing something from the models. They're saying, whoa, it's not going to be as bad as we thought. This is why you can't look at one model. You can't look at one projection and say this is everything. You've got to look at a body of them, because North Carolina, you could go to the New York Times right now, and you could say, North Carolina, you're one of the 9 states that is doing everything wrong just because you're on this list. You're on the bad boys list. But you go IHME, whatever they're doing, they've clearly started to revise it. I do want to go and just real quick say where IHME says cases are going up, where they do see that. Illinois up by about 1,000, Arizona up by 3,300, California up by 1,000, Colorado by 641. And then they don't highlight any others. But the whole point being is IHME is revising downward these numbers. You don't see it on CNN. You don't see it on MSDNC or MSDNC cold case or whatever Trump always says, which makes me laugh. You don't see it on ABC, CBS, NBC. This is a big deal.
Here's what the big deal about it. Before the number came out in the revised, they were making a big deal about new numbers coming out. After the numbers came out, crickets, right? I don't think you've seen them on all the shows. Now, if the numbers have been up, they've been all over. This is also, which they don't really define in their methodology, is that this is where some of the social distancing is coming off, right? You're still going to try to keep social, but listen, today, the reason we wanted to start with this today's reopen day. All 50 states in some aspect will have a reopening, right? Now, some of this is going to be much more – they're taking their foot off the brake than others, but everybody now – officially the game has started. And we should note that a lot of people are not making what the initial recommendations of the 14 days of decline. Everybody just pulling the trigger.
And there's been no change to the IHME's multi-stage hybrid model since May 4th. And so it's not as though the equation has changed, and that's what's leading to this downward revision. And again, now we're not saying the IHME is absolutely the gold standard, that they're infallible or anything of the case.
But until somebody else comes out and starts putting out something, it's used as the gold standard. I know they have the averages of averages, but this is one they still continue to put the research people from University of Washington. Now there's 2 or 3 of them that come on the shows all the time, so they're presented. And unless we hear different from Dr. Fauci and from Colonel Ambassador Birx, Dr. Birx, we're not going to, we don't know. This is the one that we still is the default position to.
Yeah, and look, this is ever since the May 4th revisions, they are starting to work in some of these details like wearing masks, the social distancing, the laws and rules that are in place at a state-by-state level. So this is pretty darn comprehensive. Look, there are a couple things in here. They use a few words and places in their modeling, like it's likely due to this. Well, don't give me a model then. Say it's likely because either or you're the ones who are doing your own metrics. And so don't say likely. Like, is this part of your metrics or not? That's fine. We're not going to get
in next block. We've got Dr. Edwards on flow. This is the big thing about bringing the supply chain back, doing jobs. The U.S. government now involved in helping this out with private capital. I want to go to before we leave this segment though. The CDC. You're the first one to get into the details about what they were actually releasing. Now it's a mini firestorm, not a huge firestorm, but they left churches off. And CNN is saying this morning, I don't know if we got it, but that the White House purposely left churches off because they want to have churches have a big run of this. Let's go back to your analysis of the CDC the other day. It wasn't like it, and this is our problem with the administrative state. It was kind of a nothing burger. Right? I mean, if you look at they had some general common sense. If this is what we're waiting for from the great CDC, the 19 pages that were released didn't actually – if this is what CNN is now saying, the White House withheld churches because of all this great guidance and detailed guidance on schools and day jobs, it was none of that. Right?
Well, I actually think they withheld churches because of the fear of the First Amendment and them defining what churches can and cannot do. I think that was a sticky area. I think that Bob Barr covered some of these questions last 2 weeks ago. But I think that one of the things that's really interesting about this CDC reopen, some of the levels that they require for you to do it require that ICU beds be at under 80% in the first thing, under 75%, and under 70% in phase 3. Now, I did a little bit of research on this overnight, and it doesn't make sense when you look at the actual bed usage in general around the country. And I went and looked at a couple of different studies, and apparently, on average, occupancy in surgical ICUs, this is from the NIH, 77%, 79%, 80%, 68.2% occasionally. So on average, we're close to this even without a pandemic. How do we achieve these ICU rates of 70%?
Well, this is a question I had. The doctor in charge of this at St. John's, the fantastic institution in Santa Monica, came on back in February. He talked about the gating event being ICU. And he says, hey, it's normally at 80 to 85%. ICUs, a capacity limitation throughout the country historically, if you have any kind of emergency in your area. Normally, ICU units are at 80 to 85% at St. John's.
Even without a pandemic.
With no pandemic. Remember,
how do we get to that 70% that they require for phase 3?
On this show, he's the very first guy to say, hey, the full capacity in the United States is about 100,000 beds. We have surge capacity if we jury-rig some stuff for another 20,000. And we had this discussion. So when CDC came back out, it's like, hold on. If we flip the switch and go back to normal business for the rest of hospitals, we're going to be already –
Important note before we go to the break, I do want to say they do have a split out on here, a deep dive on assisted living facilities. Maybe we should send that to the governor of New York.
Wow. War Room Pandemic, back in a moment with Flow CEO.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. We're going to get to Dr. Eric Edwards, CEO of Flow, in 1 second. But I want to, before we go, I don't want to have a cheap shot at Cuomo. This is quite important, what you're talking about. And he should have revived this whole thing with the nursing homes. Remember, the mantra on the reopen is rapidly, smartly, and safely. Okay, those three have to come together. The convergence of therapeutics and mass testing and quarantining and all that. But part of this is being able to kind of segment out where the highest issues are, right? And nursing homes are clearly that.
Yeah, and I'll go and tweet this out, and folks can follow it, and we'll put it up on the War and Pandemic site. So here's what it is. It's 60 pages, and again, this is the CDC. It's their overall coronavirus reopening and kind of doing the deep dive. If there's 60 pages, there are probably 60,000 hyperlinks. And this is where it gets to – it's a little bit overload. I mean, it's kind of what you expect the academics to put forward to people. They do have split outs. You saw the graphs that they put out a couple days ago where it's –
But I want overload here. Because
yes.
This is one of the things that's important. And in the health – remember, it's federal level. The governor's got the management, and the county supervisors and mayors have the execution. In disregard for CDC, I want CDC – to be a little over the top in the I don't mind flooding the zone with information.
Well, you got to keep in mind there are different populations that they're trying to reach here. So, for example, the page that I'm currently on, which is the considerations when preparing for COVID-19 in assisted living facilities. They get into such minutia, such as definitions of a cloth face covering, a face mask, a respirator. That's fine if you're an actual administrator to go into that. But as far as the more of the kind of the lay person, what they're going to go into, someone who might be a worker at a day camp for kids or a school or a restaurant, then you want to have the tight, concise one-pager that's easily digestible. But they do go into a lot more detail. And look, like I said, there are so many hyperlinks. You really kind of get lost in the weeds on linking back to previous studies and different things. But there's not a heck of a lot that I've seen initially that's, wow, this is brand new. They have a lot of recommendations. But I think there's some basic things like, what is a fever? We've talked about this on the show. There are 20 different definitions of what actually a fever is.
Well, every state's got a different definition right now of what a fever is, right?
Yeah, that's right. Real quick on this nursing home thing as well, because I wrote about this last week when we started to realize what was going on. I just want to present the dichotomy for the audience here. Okay, so in my piece, Mark Parkinson, President and CEO of American Healthcare Association, slammed the idea. You had testimony in USA Today on May the 2nd from Kathleen Cole, whose 89-year-old mother, Dolores McGoldrick, died after this having happened. She said it's like a slaughterhouse at these places. Patricia McGinnis, of Advocates for Nursing Home Reform, said sacrificing the lives of beloved nursing home residents is beyond unconscionable. And on April 20th, Dr. Michael Wasserman of the California Association on Long-Term Care Medicine told NPR, if you push people out of the hospitals to make space and you push them into nursing homes a couple of weeks later, for every one of those you send to the nursing home, you may get 20 back in the hospital. So my question is, we keep getting told, follow the experts, follow the science. Where were these governors doing? Where's Governor Cuomo doing that?
This is all going to come out in the lawsuits, and because as we said, every casket is going to have a lawyer. Jack, what's the casualty rate among all the dead? We're over 90,000 American citizens now dead, heading towards, according to the University of Washington, 34,000 by 143 by August 4th. People are saying we could be at World War I was about 116,000. There was a story yesterday. We'll be there by June 15th. We could certainly be over 100,000 by May 31st. What's the casualty rates of those 90,000? What percentage are nursing homes and elderly people?
On average, if you look at the various states, probably the best of them are about 25%, and there's 2 or 3 at that level. The rest of them are 40 to 60% of all the casualties were in long-term health care facilities. It's a tragedy. There's no question. Somebody said the other day, and I thought it was kind of poignant. He said, a lot of these guys are people, Korean vets, right? He said
WW2 vet. You got the greatest generation in Korea, Vietnam too.
They dodged the Chinese communist bullets back in the day, and they got taken down at the end of their lives by one.
Unbelievable. And to call it slaughterhouses. I mean, this is why this thing's got to be promulgated, and people are going to be held accountable for this. Okay, let's go now to solutions. Part of the solution here is bringing the supply chain back. Part of the solution is bringing the medical supply chain back. The other is American jobs for American citizens. And it's action, action, action. Dr. Eric Edwards is someone who knows how to take action. He's the CEO of Flow. They're opening up a new facility that's with Peter Navarro and Dr. Rosemary Gibson. All these people have been assisting this. Dr. Edwards, tell us exactly what's going on. It's a three-part process that you're doing, advanced manufacturing. Describe what you're doing, how many people are going to be hired, and when can we start making drugs here in the United States of America?
Well, thank you so much, Steve, and for having me on your show. We are super excited to finally have this contract in partnership with the federal government, with the administration, who has been behind this effort, and HHS, BARDA, all of them have been supporting this initiative. Flow Corporation's mission is to provide high-quality, low-cost generic pharmaceuticals and their ingredients through state-of-the-art U.S.-based advanced manufacturing. We started working on this over a year ago. We began planning for this model because we saw all the trade disputes occurring with China. We knew that our supply chain was already at risk. It's been that way for years. There are over 200 drugs on the FDA drug shortage list. So we saw these drugs in shortage long before COVID-19. And then when COVID-19 hit, we said we need to get working immediately, bring domestic drug manufacturing back to America. So we've assembled a world-class team with a world-class vision and world-class partners who are all committed to that objective. And we're already delivering today. With our partnership with Civica RX, we've already delivered 1.6 million doses of critical medicines for hospitalized COVID-19 patients to the Strategic National Stockpile. These are medicines, Steve, the drugs to get patients on the ventilators, medicines for blood pressure, certain key antibiotics. But as you well know, it's estimated that over 80% of our active pharmaceutical ingredients are manufactured abroad, primarily in India and China. And we really need to secure our future as a matter of national public health security and have these critical medicines and their ingredients all the way back to precursor chemicals made here at home. And that's what Flow is executing on, and we're working immediately.
Okay, I just want to make sure. You're doing the precursors, the API, and the generic drug, all three stages, correct?
So what this federal government contract is enabling us to do is taking two major approaches. The first approach is rapid surge response. So while we're building this critical infrastructure and bringing it back home, that's been lost over 2 decades here, we're immediately partnering with domestic U.S.-based manufacturers to begin making those precursor chemical ingredients. And unfortunately, there aren't many left, but we are engaging with them to get it done. We're partnering with a company called Ampac Fine Chemicals, who has multiple API manufacturing facilities. They were making branded drugs. We said, we want to reserve your capacity. We need you to start making generic drugs. So they're a partner with us as well. And then we're working with Civica, the largest nonprofit pharmaceutical company, to make and convert that API into finished dosage forms. And they're already leveraging their current contract manufacturing network to do that right now, turning on manufacturing campaigns. And then the second part is actually build the infrastructure. We're talking multiple factories. We're building it in Virginia, and we're going to create up to 350 jobs right here.
Talk to us about this strategic national stockpile. People understand the petroleum reserve stock, the petroleum reserve strategic that we fill up in case something happens. They're just finding out now about, hey, we're supposed to have things for ventilators, but I don't think anybody knew we had something for drugs. Describe what that is.
Sure. Yeah. So right now, your viewers have been hearing a lot about the Strategic National Stockpile, or SNS. That has been established for years. What we at Flow envisioned and is now being supported by the federal government is let's create what we call our Strategic Active Pharmaceutical Ingredient Reserve, or the SAPR. It's modeled after the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We were telling the federal government, listen, let's not focus on all these finished dosage forms such as sterile injectables, vials and syringes that often are expensive to manufacture, and then they have short shelf lives, some 24 months, even 12 months. Why not instead secure our most essential medicines and their key ingredients, including precursor chemicals and key starting materials, get them in a secure warehouse or warehouses that are geographically dispersed, and Flow's creating that first one. And we already have a temporary SAPR as well that we're filling up as fast as possible. But let's secure the ingredients that oftentimes have over 5 years of a shelf life. And then in case of a supply disruption, trade dispute, natural disaster, or COVID-19 or future public health threat, then we can pull that ingredient that is at risk of vulnerable supply disruptions or exacerbated shortage convert it to a finished dosage form with our partners such as Civica RX, and then get it into the strategic national stockpile for distribution to hospital systems and for use by patients. That's what we're going to be doing as well.
Dr. Edwards, we've got about 30 seconds. Can this be replicated? You're doing it in Richmond. Can this be replicated throughout the country?
Yes, Steve, it's our hope that this is going to serve as a model to inspire others to bring back manufacturing in the United States. There's a lot of work to be done. Flow cannot be the solution here. Flow needs to be the beginning of a broader plan and a solution on behalf of the United States. We're proud that the Trump administration, HHS, BARDA, and both sides of the aisle actually have called attention to this issue, this national security threat. And our hope is that other companies continue to work in private public partnerships to do the exact same thing for some of our other key essential medicines, and including our antibiotic production, for which hardly any of our penicillins are made in America. So it's just a start, and we're excited to be a part of it.
Do you have a Twitter handle, and how can people follow this on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's at Flow, PHLOW, USA is our Twitter handle, and we're going to put our heads down and get back to work and start making these medicines, and there'll be more news to follow. But thank you so much for the continued work and your realization that this supply chain and this industrial base must be secured.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. We're going to return in a moment with War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
We didn't have a chance to tell Dr. Edwards he's now, he's been officially christened because Politico's got a hit piece. The day it opens and the day's on some conservative media. He's on Fox. He's on Maria Bartiromo. Of course, Daniel Littman and the team over there. Hat tip to Daniel. They come in with a hit piece on Dr. Edwards. Dr. Edwards, don't take it the wrong way. It means you're over the target, okay? This is what we told Epic Times the time that Rachel Maddow went after him. And certain people over there want to curl up into the crowd. I said, no, this is a great thing. What do you mean? This means that you're meaningful. This means you're relevant. This means you're having an impact. Speaking of Rachel Maddow and Rachel Maddow's producers, who we know listen to the show religiously, as we watch your show religiously, I think they've misinterpreted something. We got to get into this because she went off last night. Do we actually have the audio of Rachel first, and then required watching by the entire War Room team is the opening segment of Rachel Maddow every night. We want to deconstruct it because it normally follows a lot of the stuff we're talking about in the morning. Do we?
I have to be honest with you. I've never watched it.
Okay, that's what Jack gets all the best segments. Do we have her audio? Let's listen to her.
I like Don Lemon too much.
The national response.
Yeah, and I have a tough time doing the Maddow thing also. It's
Incompetent. It's another thing to add a whole new self-inflicted level of public health harm, misinformation, and almost literal insanity in terms of understanding the facts about the virus on top of what you already have to cope with. I mean, and all the while, the president continues to try to blame somebody else, anybody else, for what has gone wrong here. Yesterday, you might have seen he sent this letter to the World Health Organization, threatening the World Health Organization anew and saying that the United States was going to leave the World Health Organization altogether in the middle of the pandemic. The president's letter, in making that threat, cited one of the most influential peer-reviewed medical journals in the world, the British medical journal called The Lancet, as part of the American government's beef with the WHO. The president said in his letter that WHO had ignored reports from early December about the virus spreading in China. The president's letter said, quote, "We know the following. The WHO consistently ignored credible reports of the virus spreading in Wuhan in early December 2019 or even earlier, including reports from the Lancet Medical Journal." Well, the Lancet Medical Journal wrote to the White House today to say, oh my God, what are you talking about? I'm paraphrasing that, but that's basically what here's what they actually said. I can quote it. Quote, "This statement is factually incorrect. The Lancet published no report in December 2019 referring to a virus or outbreak in Wuhan or anywhere else in China."
Okay. First off, it all started with Jack Maxey talking about Lancet. I think, and I may have, for the first time, if not in their history, in a long time, called for essentially Bolsonaro's resignation or to be removed last week, and then followed up. This was an editorial. And this is a peer-reviewed, one of the most respected journals in the world, and been at the forefront of coverage and peer review articles in this pandemic. The next day, they came out and had an editorial that Donald Trump should be defeated in November, right? You brought that up, analyzed it. Then she talks about it that night. And now we talked about this the other day. And so I say that her production staff has misinterpreted what actually went down. And Jack Maxey, you've been Mr. Lancet since January when we started this. In fact, Rachel Maxey texted me back in December, the third week of when, the fourth week of December 19, that there was a SARS outbreak in China and people should get on top of it. So let's go. What it actually, Jack, you're the only person who walk us through and tell us exactly what happened with the White. And by the way, Rachel Maddow, this was not a letter. As I said to Maria Bartiromo, this was a bill of indictment, okay? Note to Dr. Tedros, lawyer up. Not just should World Health Organization. This is not, Dr. Tedros, that letter ain't about money, okay? This is about culpability, responsibility, because people are going to come look for answers and they're going to hold people accountable, and you're dirty. Okay, so you can do all the stuff you want to do with your Swiss bank accounts and all the money you got tucked in other places and all this. But hey, trust me, on that letter was a tightly argued legal document. Okay, that was a bill of indictment. That one, hey, we're thinking about maybe holding some money back. No. This came for you. Let's go to the Lancet piece and why I think Rachel Maddow's staff did not actually get into the details here.
Well, here's a Lancet piece from January 24th, 2020. It's called Clinical Features of Patients Infected with 2019 Novel Coronavirus in Wuhan, China. Now, remember, this is the same day, I think, that we started our show, right? The 24th.
And the 23rd was, I think, the quarantining of Wuhan started on the 23rd, and the Hubei province lockdown started the 23rd. So this would be the next day.
So this is published on the 24th, and it says the findings. By January 2nd, 2021, admitted hospital patients had been identified as having laboratory-confirmed 2019 COVID infections. Okay, and then it goes into the statistics about who and the ages and everything like that.
But 2 January.
But let's remember,
yes,
2 January
would mean December.
If there were 40 people with laboratory-tested infections, that means there were multiples of people who were infected who hadn't been tested yet, and those people who were tested were positive in December.
The Republic of China, the Free Republic of China, notified the World Health Organization on December 31st of 2019. You have we believe there's a SARS breakout with human-to-human transmission and community spread, okay, on the 31st, Rachel Maddow's staff. Now, Mr. Raheem Kassam, you have your own analysis of this.
Yeah, I think this comes down to semantics. This is the kind of thing an editor looks for in copy, where it doesn't actually say what you think it says, or it's open to interpretation. And that's why Rachel Maddow and your stuff, you get a red card because I think you know that, you should know that, and you're willfully choosing the interpretation that doesn't represent that. But also, I'd say, and I love this letter, I love this letter, but whoever drafted this line gets a yellow card because it's not as tightly worded as it could be. Let's review the clip, the section of this thing that is in dispute. Quote, the WHO consistently ignored credible reports of the virus spreading in Wuhan in early December 2019, or even earlier, according to reports from the Lancet Medical Journal. The way Maddow's team is interpreting that is they think that the White House is referring to articles in the Lancet Medical Journal in early December 2019. The White House is saying, no, the Lancet reported about things that had to have happened in early December 2019 in their January 2nd articles. That's what's going on here.
Here's where I also think the phoniness of the Rachel Maddow part, besides, is that the overwhelming, if you go through this letter, I believe it's almost 4 pages long, this bill of indictment, it goes back and very much tracks through what World Health Organization. I don't remember in Rachel Maddow's segment her talking about the 12th January press release, her talking about the 14 January tweet, her talking about Tedros's obviously kowtowing and involvement and trips and all this, and the World Health Organization being accomplice before the fact, right? Because remember, what the CCP did is they knew they had a problem. They were preparing to shut down Lunar New Year. They were also preparing at the same time as they shut down Lunar New Year so they wouldn't spread it throughout China more. We're allowing it to go overseas with the innocent Chinese taking it everywhere. And at the same time, planning on sweeping up PPE, personal protective equipment, which is the key to both testing and the key to both the ICU unit doctors, the first across the beach at Normandy in this war against this virus, willingly and consciously making all of those decisions from being a net importer to a net exporter to an importer. They went to Europe, Brazil, the United States, and Australia and swept it all up. That's under the cover of the World Health Organization. So, Rachel, you ought to have a segment besides looking at the tiny discrepancy in Lancet, which I still think comes down on the. I agree with you. Red card for Maddow, yellow card for White House.
I got another little piece here from another Lancet piece at the end of January. They've actually got a flow chart of important times, and they've listed December 30th, cluster of cases of unknown origin in China. So Lancet on the 24th of January is claiming clearly that the CDC in China knew on December 30th. Now, what I find very interesting, and I didn't put this together, remember we normally name viruses for a geographic location near where they are. Ebola virus, Marburg virus, and people just accept that that's the naming regime. Well, apparently it was January 12th that the World Health Organization came out with the new name COVID-19, which I know was done in cooperation with the Communist Chinese government because they did not want to have a traditional name, which would have been SARS novel coronavirus-2 or
Wuhan.
Or the Wuhan virus or Yangtze fever or something. So this shows to me also the same kind of coordination. Remember? The 12th, they said no transmission.
Here's my problem with the mainstream media, and this is why we're so proud of the show. You sit there and harp on every night. You're evidence-based, you're science-based, you're data-based. You're none of that. We want to see it. Bring it, okay? This is another example of where you're spinning something for political purposes, okay? And here you're just dead wrong. That letter, what you ought to do is let's do the Rachel Maddow segment on the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros.
I have to jump in on this. You're absolutely right. Chris Cuomo is not asking Andrew Cuomo about the nursing homes. And every single thing that we've seen since we started this show, and of course this goes way beyond the start of war and impeachment, but what have we noted? Projection by the other side onto the President of the United States, onto the White House. Look at CNN's headline on their website right now as we speak. It is, quote, CDC sources, White House puts politics ahead of science. But who is putting politics ahead of science here? It's Rachel Maddow. And if Rachel Maddow had a scintilla of editorial and journalistic integrity, she would get up there this evening and she would say, you know what? There are two interpretations to this letter, and I think I should explain to the audience why we've opted to take this one, and if we've got it wrong, then I apologize. But she won't do that.
Here's something else I think that we have to understand. We've been led by science this whole time, and we are led to believe that science is this objective kind of body of knowledge with no impact anywhere else. Listen, Lancet, the most respected medical journal, is writing editorials asking for the removal of national leaders. Don't think that science is not political. If anything, this has shown us how politicized science has become.
And you're going to see, look, there's studies right now on hydroxychloroquine and zinc that are being done all over. As we say, look, we're for any therapeutic that can be backed up that works. You're going to see these things come out, and now then they're going to have another meltdown because they're all over the beatdown of this because Trump has supported it, right? So this takes up, hours and hours of airtime instead of getting back into the important thing. Remember, rapidly, smartly, and safely. Everybody, regardless of their political affiliation or the ideology, wants to open up the country. Look at the progressives in California. You can't go to the beach; they're not happy. This weekend, if there's a beautiful Memorial Day weekend in New York, and De Blasio has blocked off the water, Okay, it's not just Pete Hegseth and the American Crusaders are going to be out there. You're going to have a bunch of people that from the political left that want to go into the water on Memorial Day. Okay, this is why we got to get back to the data. We got to get back to the science. The CDC thing is a perfect example. The 19 pages are kind of this general, I don't want to say mumbo jumbo, but I think you did a very good thing of going through and says this is that big a deal. The churches are not in there, and so now, I don't want to say the deep state, but some apparatchik.
We're going to do a much deeper dive tomorrow, specifics such as restaurants being told that they should check their employees' temperatures daily. We're going to go into that level of detail tomorrow.
We're in pandemic. Be back in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Alexander Preet and Rebecca Carabas, the always crack comms department of the War Room, are in communication, reaching out to Rachel Maddow's producer. We need Jack the Axe Maxey on Rachel Maddow tonight, don't you think?
No. Let's keep the We're going to stay focused on getting ready for the show tomorrow.
Okay, it's talking about. Well, let's get to this. We got polling. We've got the Dr. Fauci favorable ratings. We've got a lot to get to.
Yeah, and one quick thing: the op-ed editor for the New York Post, Sarab Amari, just tweeted out, "This week and next, the New York Post is running a series of columns by Lee Smith, each profiling one of the innocents whose lives were turned upside down by the collusion hoax." First up, General Flynn, and they're going to go through. This is going to be fire.
Wow. Yeah, it's going to be great. Lee Smith, a friend of the show. We've had Lee on a lot. Great investigative reporter.
And honestly, Sorab is one of the only people that I would allow to edit me. So that he is a great.
He's got a massive piece.
Yeah. So let's go through. CNBC has new polling out today. They did with Change Research. It's a survey poll of 5,400 likely voters in battleground.
It's a big.
It
survey.
is. That means that there is. I haven't gone through all the exact methodology. It means there's probably a pretty heavy online component. And again, the important thing with polls: look at the trends. Don't look at any one thing and say this is the end all be all. It's all about the trend lines. However, this is key. So they went through Arizona, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Do have to say these are a little bit more favorable leaning swing states. We've seen other definitions of swing states that include Colorado, that include places.
I don't like Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina being put into swing or battleground states. I guess North Carolina's been on there, but adding Arizona and Georgia means time and money.
Yes. But let's go to their head-to-head matchup. Trump in these swing states holding a narrow 48-46 lead over Joe Biden.
It's big.
And among independents, Trump holds a 41-32 lead. He also leads, and here are the two indicators. This is the thing that I want folks to pay attention to. Who's doing a better job on the economy? Who's doing a better job on handling coronavirus? He has an 11-point lead, 51-40 on handling the economy. They're in a statistical tie over who do a better job on handling coronavirus. This number has to improve as we move forward. But there's some really the net of this, though, is that voters are split on almost every question possible based on partisan affiliation. When you start going through issues such as a second wave, when you go through issues of who takes the blame on taking time to respond. Here's an example. Anyone listening to this show would think this is a no-brainer. The simple question of businesses should be protected from lawsuits from employees and customers who claim to have contracted coronavirus at their business. And 72% of Republicans say, well, of course they should be protected. Only 10% of Democrats agree. You go and flip the question around, say employees and customers should be able to take businesses to court if they fail to take reasonable precautions. 13% of Republicans agree with that statement. 78% of Democrats. So basically, I'll save you reading the whole thing. It just means if you show up and vote Republican or Democrat, this country is just as polarized as ever.
But I want to go back. The one surprising numbers in here was the independents. The independents, and particularly thinking about Trump and the economy, and even Trump in handling the coronavirus issue, actually broke much higher for Trump than I think that. Listen, we've had bad polling numbers. That's where that Senate lunch the other day, President Trump went up there to say, hey, guys, we got to pull together because there are some bad numbers. coming out of a place like Arizona, which had McSally down by 13 and had the president, I think, down 6. There's been some bad. This is the best set of numbers I've seen in battleground and swing states in quite a while. And the most powerful number, to me, was the independents are actually giving President Trump a opening to make the case.
Well, I thought one item that was in here, sorry to interrupt, Jason, was that 66% of Republicans agree with the president that we have to reopen the economy. And 47% of unaffiliated voters agree with that. Only 37% of Democrats agree that we got to reopen this economy. And then a plurality of Democrats said that they'd like to see a $2,000 a month payment for everybody earning under $120,000, even if the economy starts opening up. They want that money no matter what.
UBI is now in the conversation.
So the snarky right-wing radio response to that is, of course, because Democrats don't work. But the corollary,
exactly what we don't do at the war.
Well, exactly, that's what I'm saying. The corollary of that, which is more likely true, and we know how this works, is who are the pollsters hitting and when. And how are they reaching these people? If you're reaching younger gig economy types on their cell phones, and that's why we drill into how these polls are performed in terms of the methodology, then you're going to get more support for UBI. That's just how it is.
But do you want to...
Before we go to Fauci, Jack brought up a point. I took the other thing. I was actually surprised that the number for the Republicans was that low. It was 2/3, 1/3 about opening up the economy. Now, maybe the way that the thing is presented. Here, Jason came up with this construct, as he often does, a couple of weeks ago. Rapidly, safely. People want this done regardless of ideology, I think, but it's got to be done smartly. It's got to be done safely. And look, the burden's been put on the governors. There's been some overall guidance. I don't think CDC's done it particularly wrapped themselves in glory on this one. I just go back to Dr. Birx. I'm with Dr. Birx. I don't believe anything. I don't believe anything I hear to CDC. I think there's got to be some changes. I'm all for Birx as head of CDC and bring Gottlieb in. Bring Gottlieb in to head HHS.
I've talked to Hatfield about it many times, and really what he thinks should happen, and I agree with him, is this idea of collapsing NIH and CDC out to the great academic institutions around the country, have a rotating board of directors, have constant communication, and let these universities pick up the slack, because we're giving billions of dollars to a group down in Atlanta who didn't do their job.
And it could be a very good point to debate. That shows why Dr. Hatfield is one of the smartest people on microbiology and virology and epidemiology and everything where you need to be in a room with no windows being smart. That is the single worst piece of PR advice that I have heard in 184 episodes of the show. Let's dissolve the end. Now, he might be right, but I'm saying purely from the PR aspect.
And maybe not doing it. Let's go talking PR expert, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, so Rasmussen has new polling out saying the Americans give Dr. Fauci higher marks for his performance, but disagree with his go slow approach. But you might be shocked at just how high of marks they give him. 68% of Americans polled have a favorable opinion of Dr. Fauci.
Great job, Jack.
So
68% hold it. That's basically Trump base minus a couple.
No, but
we're losing some of the base guys. The base is 35%.
No, the buried lead is now up to like a 32% unfaved. So you're missing that. But here's the thing: people do disagree with the go slow. 49% by huge lead. Americans want to get open as fast as possible. Only 36% are down on the go slow.
Pete Hegg says the American Crusade is next on War and Pandemic.